Good evening, everybody. It is a Friday edition of the Safety and the Sportswriter Show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe as we get ready for the NFL playoffs. And as a lady, Anita Marks, who works for ESPN, said last week, the playoffs are a great time of year. The only thing it sucks about it, it means the end of the football season.
Yeah, well, I'm still hurting from the end of college football season,
Yeah.
especially the way that it ended for me with my team getting screwed for the second time in 3 years. It's rough way for I love college football, but right now I hate it. And I'm sad that it's over, but I'm even sadder at the way that it concluded.
The worst thing about it is, you pray for a good story. As a writer, you love the story of TCU getting there. But when reality hit him in the face last week, it's such a disappointment because you sit there as a fan going, this is supposed to be ultimate. It's kind of like why NASCAR makes the Daytona 500 their first race of the year. Everybody's in great shape. The cars are all perfect. You should have a great race.
Yeah.
Here at the end of what it was a normal NCAA season. I mean, there were some great stories along the way. TCU was one of them, but it shows there's a big difference between the real big time programs in the NCAA right now and the rest.
Well, I think it also just goes to show you how well they played against Michigan and how well they were coached because I think they were outmatched. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that in that game TCU outcoached Michigan and they just, well, I mean obviously the two interceptions by McCarthy were huge and I just think Jim Harbaugh, really mismanaged the end of that game, but I mean, the game plan itself was not solid. And I think TCU left it all out on the field. That's how they were able to hang on at the end. But it just looked to me like against Georgia, they were out of gas. And once they got down, 33-7, it kind of looked like they gave up a little bit. But, they were outmatched for sure. But if they hadn't had to play, the game the week before, maybe they could have, had a little bit better of a showing. But this is something I wanted to ask you about because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. And James, my co-host on Man Coverage, and me have talked about a lot. Is you get blowouts. We've seen the first two games in this college football playoff were the best semifinal games we've ever seen. The
Right.
playoff, the final was horrible. And then you think back to some of the other playoff games have been really bad. What is the 12 team playoff going to look like? I'm just not so sure they really need to do a 12 team. Me and you talked before, and I thought 8 was a really good number. 12 just seems like there's going to be a lot of one sided games.
There could be a lot of one-sided games. It also could be the problem of a hot 12th team taking out a top, one of the top teams that you were hoping to be in the final. I mean, it's kind of what we go through in playoffs every year. But what you hope is the more teams you add, the really the cream will rise to the top. I guess. I mean, let's face that it's all about the money grab.
Yeah. Hey, no, I'm happy about it because
Yeah,
it's going to be harder and harder for them to screw the Buckeyes out of getting into the. I mean, we're going to be in the top 12
yeah,
pretty much every year, so I'm cool with it. I'm happy with it,
yeah. But
but I just want good games. I want quality football.
well, yeah, but here's where we go into it. And this is going to be the hardest part about football. There's two things that bother me right now. First of all, it the great teams like Alabama and Georgia get to stockpile talent. Um, and there's other teams where, well, right now Notre Dame. You look at them, and I've been crying about not crying, but I've been bitching about it for even in the Brian Kelly days. Why can't they get a quarterback in there? Why can't they? They're going to get Hartman, and we'll see how that works out for them. But the fact of the matter is, why can't they get a quarterback there? And then you see teams like your team, Ohio State, teams like Alabama, teams like Georgia, teams like Clemson for a while that just roll them out, roll them out, roll them out. And they have guys that are willing to sit around like a Mac Jones to sit on the bench for how many years waiting for his turn. And I don't know whether And I don't see how you could do it. There should be maybe if you could do like a limit on how many 5-star athletes go to each program. I don't know. To even out the talent base, maybe a little bit, but you can't do that. So I think we're stuck with what we're stuck with. We're going to have the 4 or 5 really great teams that should be playing for the championship, and in the most part, one of those 5 teams is going to win it. But you're going to have the imposters coming in every once in a while, and you're going to have teams that shouldn't be there. And can they knock off with a super effort an Ohio State or a Georgia? Sure. But hopefully what you're going to get out of this is you're going to get more of the really good programs that are well stocked. So the game should be better.
Well, I think things are changing a little bit. I think the NIL packages are going to help some teams that, like Miami, like Oregon. They're getting some guys that they probably normally wouldn't have gotten because they're throwing cash at them. Texas A&M, Texas, those type schools are doing the same thing. And then, the portal, there's teams like Georgia. You know how many guys Georgia had from the portal on their national championship team?
How many?
0. They didn't get one guy, but some other teams have used it really effectively.
Right.
And so I think that, it's not something that I think you should overuse or just try and build your team through the portal. I mean, we saw what happened with Nebraska. Scott Frost, kind of basically took a flyer on recruiting and tried to pull all these guys out of the portal to save his job, and it backfired on him. But if you can fill a couple of positions like Notre Dame getting a quarterback, Alabama getting a wide receiver, it'll help teams, I think, fill some gaps and maybe make them more competitive. But, one of the biggest stories to me is, what's happened in Clemson. Clemson was in the college football playoff for 6 years in a row. And now here's 2 years in a row where not only were they not in it, but, based on the
coaches.
Yeah, based on the Tennessee game and based on, the Notre Dame game, they look like they're far from it. So it'll be interesting to me to see whether or not they can get back where they were.
Well, I mean, they also hit home runs on their quarterbacks.
Yeah, like 4 in a row.
Right. And then
Deshaun Watson, Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence, they hit on a bunch of them.
DJ just didn't seem to be able to, and that maybe set it back. But they do have that young quarterback sitting right there. We'll see how they snap back next year. Maybe DJ, not to put him down, but maybe he was the anomaly. Maybe he's the one guy who is a 3-star, not a 5-star.
Hey, you know what, though? He kind of got blamed for all their problems. And let me tell you, it wasn't all. I know that, but I'm just telling you, if you really look at the tape and you watch the games closely and you study the film, like a good analyst would do, you'll see that their problems existed outside of the quarterback position. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but their offensive line was not as good as it used to be. And also their wide receivers. You think about all the great wide receivers that come out of there: Sammy Watkins, Martavius Bryant, T. Higgins, Amari Rodgers, the kid from the Raiders, Renfro. I mean, you just go down the line, and they always had these top-level wide receivers. Who's their top-level receiver this year?
Well, let me put this, because you're more in tune to this, you're more plugged in than I am. He's lost a lot of coaches, Dabo, over the last few years, going to other programs. Were those the guys going out, beating the pass, finding these athletes, and he comes in and seals the deal? Maybe these coaches he's got now don't have the eye for talent that those other coaches did, or can't get the trust of the families to bring that quality athletes in anymore. Could that be the problem?
Well, I think that's part of it. He's had a lot of, he had the same 2 coordinators for years, Chad Morris and Venables. He had the same 2 guys there with him for a long time, and a lot of the same assistants. Well, when you have success, what happens? People come and they pluck those guys away. And, it's not as easy as people think to just replace those guys. It's really not. And and I'm glad you mentioned that, because not only do you lose those guys' coaching ability, but in a lot of instances you lose their recruiting ability. So I don't think it's that, they're not getting good level talent, but maybe they're not getting the guys that are perfect fit for them, or maybe they're not getting the same, guys that, that are perfect for the offense they want to run, whatever the case may be. But yeah, their offensive line is just has not been as good the last 2 years. Their wide receivers, for whatever reason, have not developed, have not been as as good of playmakers as the guys before them, and that's why they've haven't been as dominant.
Yeah, so I think a lot of that has to do with and then remember too, these guys that were cherry picked off his staff. Now he's competing against them,
right?
And they know all the things to say to attract the guys away from Clemson. Maybe they know the bad points of the Tigers program and can maybe point that out to them. I don't know, but
and you got to think Clemson. I don't know if you've ever been there. I have. I've been there several times, and I went to the Duke basketball game last year, one of Coach K's last games, and stayed on campus for a couple of days. Clemson is in the middle of nowhere. It's a very, very small town. It's a very small college. They do not have the same financial resources that Bama has. They don't have the same financial backing that Ohio State has. So, potentially, I know they've got tons of rabid fans and they've got a really good program, but I'm just saying they may not be as in tune with the NIL and with the financial packages that Georgia can offer these kids. And I think they're losing out on some of them.
And they're also kind of new to the party. I mean, they've been in the ACC for years, but it was Duke, it was North Carolina. It was those teams that were being talked about. They were the old line. Clemson, although good and solid, and they did win a national championship in 1981 with Danny Ford. For the most part, their football program was an afterthought, and then they had Rick Barnes for a while as their coach for basketball, but they never really got over the hump against a North Carolina or a Virginia or a Duke. So Dabo Swinney was the first guy who really actually put them on the map for a long period of time. So they're basically one of the newer ones of the college football elite. I mean, Bama for years. Ohio State goes back decades. Michigan goes back decades. Notre Dame goes back decades. SASC decades. Penn State decades. Clemson's kind of a new guy on the block. So this is like their first generation of being a dominant football program. So if they go off the rails for a year, I wouldn't think too much of it. But they got to snap back next year.
They still won 10 games. I mean, they've won 10 games. I mean, both of their down years, they've won 10 games. My only point was they were competing for the title every year, 6 years in a row. I mean, it was win the title or it was a bad season in their eyes.
Right.
And it just hasn't been like that the last 2 years. They've struggled, to win the ACC. They won it this year and beat UNC in the championship. But let's be honest, the ACC was just absolute garbage.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think Dabo will be able to. I think he has to, get the guys back out on the trail, start bringing the like you said, the offensive and defensive linemen they were always getting, and those type of athletes, and just concentrate on that. And I don't think Dabo's too good to stay down long. I shouldn't say stay down. To be out of the elite, and then with it going up to how many teams next year, I'm sure Clemson will be in. So
I think so.
But anyways, let's get to the NFL here. Going in the first two big stories we got to talk about: the fact that Miami and Baltimore, two teams who really need it, are going to be out their star quarterbacks. Let's first talk about the Tua situation. You and I were both talking about it before we came on the air. 3 big-time concussion situations in 1 year. It's already floating out there that this could be end of Tua's career. I mean, give your input. I'll give my input on it. I personally think he should think about walking away.
Yeah, I mean, this all goes back to the game against the Bills, the first game against the Bills, where he was obviously concussed. They didn't take him out of the game, and then he got a second hit. And so basically he got 2 concussions in 1 game. Now, the NFL is just adamantly saying that first one wasn't a concussion. The team is saying it. The league is saying it. It was a concussion. I'm sorry. I know they don't want to admit it, but he was obviously concussed. He was staggering. He was woozy, and he took a huge hit. So, I mean, this all goes back to that game where he was mismanaged, he was
Right.
mishandled, and it may end up costing his career. And I'm you know, selfishly, I want to see him play this weekend. I want to see the Tua quarterback Dolphins with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle
Because as a
go
fan, it
against.
gives us the best game.
Yeah, I want to see him out there. But as someone who played this game and luckily got out, before I got hurt too bad, I want him to be thinking about himself. And I hope he takes a lot of time and meets with neurologists and some experts and gets the best advice for him and his family. I mean, the guy's already got millions of dollars. He's got at least another year in his contract. I'm sure he can get some sort of injury settlement from the league. He's not going to go away poor. I just want him to be able to live his life like a normal human being. So my opinion is, I think he should at least take some time off and definitely take a hard look at what he wants the rest of his life to look like.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Let's get a little bit to the football nature of this. You and I both have a problem with the owner of Miami. We know how knee-jerk he is.
Yeah.
I mean, someone, I have a feeling GM or someone's going to get fired out of this. I wouldn't be beyond the head coach getting fired, which would be ridiculous because they did everything right getting up for the season. I mean, coming in, you had Tua, who was perfectly healthy. You brought in Teddy Bridgewater as your backup.
Yep.
And what were the odds you lose both of them going into your playoff game against your hated rival from Buffalo, and you have to go up to Buffalo to play him, which is even worse.
Yeah.
And, I know they got off to the hot start, and they kind of squeaked into the playoffs over, the Patriots and the Steelers on the last day of the regular season. But, I mean, you can all trace it back to Tua getting injured. Before Tua gotten injured, they looked like they were going to set records for scoring.
Yes.
So
it all goes back to that one game. I mean, that not only, getting greedy and, trying to push it with some of these injuries, not only, may have impacted Tua's career, but it may set their franchise back 3 or 4 or 5 years at the quarterback position. So, I really question the motives of a lot of the people that day. And, I just hope that, he's all right. And that looking at it from a football perspective, this is not good. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater's had an injury history throughout his career. That's why he's never really been brought back as a starter. And now, even as a backup, he goes in trying to replace somebody for a couple games, and then he gets nicked up.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going in there this game into Buffalo, who's playing good football right now.
They're inspired.
And they're inspired by what's happened with their teammate. And they're going to have Skylar Thompson, who's a rookie who hasn't looked good. He hasn't thrown for over 170 yards in a football game. So I think their season is going to be done real quick with this playoff race.
Yeah, and they don't have a running game that you can depend on. You can hang your hat on that could maybe take the place and take pressure off Thompson. And their defense, though good, is not that good. Buffalo will be able to score on them. So I agree with you. I would figure something. We might as well just make a prediction on this game now. I'm picking, Buffalo something like 27-10.
Yeah, I think it's going to be worse than that. I'm going 35. I'm going to go 37-10 on that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't put raining in because there's no reason to do raining in. And I think I would not be surprised. I'm interested to see if DeMar shows up either at the game now that he's out of the hospital or something on a big board there at Buffalo to inspire and just get these guys just so cocked up that they can't be stopped.
Yeah, no, I think it's been an emotional couple of weeks, but they've had some time now. They know that DeMar's okay, so they've had some time to really kind of focus that energy that was elsewhere on the football game. So I think they're in a good spot, and I think Buffalo's primed to make a run again. I mean, they've got all the pieces in place. They've been running the football better. James Cook has started to come around as a running back and taken some of the pressure off of Josh Allen in the running game. And this defense is one of the best defenses on paper all year long.
Yeah, McDermott's a good coach, and they're primed in good situation. Then we'll go over to excuse me, Lamar Jackson not playing. I don't blame him for not playing. The knee's not ready. Should not be playing with it. And everybody, of course, the conspiracy theorists come out. It's about the contract and everything. But I don't think this is about a contract. I think this is about the fact that he has his career ahead of him. And from what I've heard, I've had a torn ACL. They say the PCL is a trickier thing to heal. There's something about it. It's how I don't even want to play doctor on TV here, but they say it's a trickier injury to get back from. He's not ready to play, and I can't blame him. But the thing is, everybody talking about the contract right now and everything else. First of all, it's just null and void because he can't play.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, we've all seen Lamar Jackson play. How does he play? He's a very athletic, mobile quarterback. I don't say he's a running quarterback because I don't really believe he is. He's a quarterback that can run, but he's a guy that can throw it, on the move. He can move the pocket. He can get in the pocket. He can throw in the pocket. He can throw outside. I mean, he's just such an electric player with his legs that let's be honest, their offensive line hasn't been great. So do you want to put him back there with a bum wheel? No. First off, that takes away what makes him great. And secondly, you're going to set him up to get hurt worse. I don't think he should go out there and play if he's injured. I mean, does it suck that he's hurt at the end of the year? Yes. But let's be honest, he's been pretty durable throughout his career until last year and this year. Unfortunately, these two seasons haven't worked out the way they would hope. But he's played through a lot of injuries. He's played through a lot of bumps and bruises. And I really, truly believe that if he felt good enough to play, he would be out there. And let's be honest, Tyler Huntley is banged up too. And they're hoping that he can play. But last week they were down to quarterback 3. So is Tyler Huntley holding out for his contract? I mean, give me a break. I don't think it has anything to do with the contract. I mean, Lamar's the one that's bet on himself and has played all year with no contract. He played in 12 games. They were 8-4. He was playing great, even though they have 0 decent wide receivers. And, I think he would continue to do so if he was healthy.
Here's the thing. There's no disputing anything you just said. And you've been yelling about this since we've been doing this show, about the fact of the matter, they put crap around this guy.
Yeah.
Would it behoove him to somehow get out of Baltimore? I mean, I love Harbaugh, but I mean, at this point, this guy every year takes a beating. He keeps them. It's obvious his worth to this team. They're crap without him, but they never go out and get him the weapons he needs around him to see really how great he can be. Is this the time for him to somehow, I know he doesn't have an agent, or somehow, how about him down in Miami?
That's exactly what I was about to say. I think this is setting up. He wanted to go to Miami last year, and I think this is setting up perfectly if Tua, decides to take some time off, or if he just can't get back to where he's, cleared to play. I think this sets up perfectly for him to go down there and play with Tyreek. I mean, think about Lamar Jackson with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, not to mention Gesicki, the tight end, and all the other good wide receivers they have.
He may be downgrading from Mark Andrews, but not that much. Gesicki's a very, very good pass-catching tight end.
Yeah, not that much, and they've actually got some pretty talented running backs too. So I think it's a good idea to get out of there. I don't know why that they don't ever get on John Harbaugh, but he's made some questionable decisions the past 3 or 4 years and cost that team some ball games. I haven't been that impressed with the general manager since Ozzie Newsome stepped away. They haven't been drafting the same as they used to. I mean, they're still getting good quality players, but the skill guys, they've swung and missed on receiver after receiver after receiver. And it's getting very old, in my opinion, or would be getting old to me if I was Lamar Jackson. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Lamar tried to get out of there. And I think it would be in his best interest to do so because he takes all, as we said before, it's kind of like down in Clemson with DJU. Let's see what DJU does out in Oregon State with some wideouts and a different coach. Let's see what Lamar looks like with some skill players because let's be honest, he hasn't had a wide receiver
Ever.
I mean, he really hasn't. He really hasn't. I mean, Hollywood Brown was his best option at wide receiver the past few years. Look what Hollywood Brown's done in Arizona. Nothing.
Yeah, it would be nice to give him and I think he needs a new start. Not that he's loved in Baltimore. The fans love him. You know, I think Harbaugh.
They should. He's their whole team.
No, I know. I think Harbaugh and him had at least a decent relationship, but maybe it's getting to the point of Belichick and Brady kind of they need to get apart from each other. Maybe that's just the way it has to be. Maybe Harbaugh wants more, and I'm not putting these guys on the same level. Maybe he likes a drop back Joe Flacco type quarterback that that's the kind of thing he wants to run. A more conservative offense. Maybe that's what he wants to run. Who knows?
I don't know, but I do know that Lamar gets a lot of the blame whenever things go wrong, and let's just be honest. I mean, you tell me who's his best weapon at the wide receiver position over the last 5 years? Tell me who you've liked on the outside for them.
He's been Mark Andrews. It's been Mark Andrews has been his only real
and he's outlet. Not a wide receiver.
No, so, I mean that's been his only outlet. I mean, we'll never. Unfortunately, Dobbins was not healthy last year, and Lamar was not healthy this year, so we can't see with him and Dobbins together in the backfield. But even that's a running back. I mean, like you said, how can we ever see how good we've seen that he can throw the ball. It's just there's no one out there to catch it, and then again and on top of it all is you sit there and you thank you for the greatest present that Baltimore Ravens ever gave to the Giants, giving Martindale as the defensive coordinator. Why Harbaugh let him walk for that young guy that was working with his brother out in Michigan, I'll never know. But that's
because he had to someone had to take the blame for them missing the playoffs last year. So instead of falling on the sword himself, he wanted to keep his job and keep making his millions. So he tosses Martindale to the Wolves, and Martindale says okay, and gets a job the next day. And that's as I've always said on our show here is whenever a coach is fired and he gets hired the next day or in the next 72 hours, it's a pretty good sign that the guy's a decent coach of football.
For sure. Well, let's look at that Cincinnati-Baltimore game. It should be Cincinnati. It is a division game. So I do think that, Baltimore will be riled up for it. They're not going to make it easy on Cincinnati. But Cincinnati looks pretty much on a roll right now. And I'm thinking this is going to be another one of those games where they're going to win by 10 points or better. I put it 28-7.
Well, they played last week and won 27-16. And, Baltimore's defense played pretty well. They hung tough. Baltimore was down 24-7 at halftime, but they held the Bengals to, I think it was 9 points in the second half. 3 points in the second half, and the defense really stiffened up and played pretty well. You're going to ask them to do that again? I mean, they had Anthony Brown, who was 19 of 44 back there throwing the ball. I mean, that is not a good look. So I just don't think the Ravens offense is going to be good enough to keep up with the Bengals and Joe Burrow, not to mention the trio. I mean, just think if Baltimore had one of the guys that Cincinnati has, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. I mean, if Baltimore had one of those guys, I'd give them a chance in this game. But because they have zero of those guys, I give them no chance.
Yeah. So we both picked those. Those two games should be the pretty much blowouts. Let's go to Saturday's games here. First game, San Francisco, Seattle. And I'm getting a little bit of a bad vibe on this. Nothing against. I'm not rooting against them. I like Brock Purdy. I've talked about him for years while he was at Iowa State and everything. I love the story he's going on. But it's really weird that this quarterback has not had a really bad game yet.
Yeah.
and it's coming in. It's just bad timing. I would have loved to see him have one really bad game before he got his crap together for the playoffs. I just have this bad feeling with Pete Carroll, and the fact that everything's been rolling into shape for San Francisco, that it's going to be either a very close game or Seattle might find a way to break up this party.
Well, and I've got to imagine that Pete Carroll's talking to his team about this 9-point spread. I mean, the Niners are out there with this, with this quarterback who was the last pick in the draft, and they're favored by 9 points. And the Geno Smith's been a feel-good story all year, but the last few weeks it hasn't been quite as good. So I think that I'm giving Seattle a chance. Do I think that Seattle's going to win the game? I don't know, but I definitely think they're going to cover that spread, and I think they're going to play tough. Pete Carroll's been doing this a long time. He's coached in a lot of playoff games. He's coached in Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. He knows what he's doing, and I'm with you. I feel good about the Seahawks. I know a lot of people don't, but I do, and I know they kind of limped into these playoffs, but they had some tough games, and they had some balls go against their way. But they still finished up the season strong. They won their last two. They beat the Jets handily 23-6, and then they found a way to win against the Rams when they had to. So I'm not as down on the Seahawks as other people are, and I'm with you. I think they're going to give the Niners a pretty good test. As you mentioned, this guy's been just having a dream season so far, and good for him. Me and you liked him at Iowa State, but at some point there's going to be a break or a ball that bounces the wrong way, and we'll see how he handles that.
And then the night game, which I'm really looking forward to. I am looking so forward to this because this is like a glimpse into the future of NFL football to see Trevor Lawrence against Justin Herbert. And I'm hoping both of them are up to the task and have a really good game. I think it could be an enjoyable game because, Jacksonville wasn't supposed to be there. They got hot midway through the season. They have a coach who has won a Super Bowl. Then you have Justin Herbert, who, came so close to getting in last year, finally gets them across the board. They got their crap together a little bit down the stretch. And I just would love to see these two guys just have one of those, you're too young to remember it, but like an old AFL shoot them out, bombs away quarterback duel. Something like a Marino Elway type game.
Yeah, no, I remember those days big time. Marino and Elway were two of my favorite players when I was a little kid. I was a Boomer Esiason guy. I was a big John Elway guy, and I loved me some Dan Marino. So I would love to see that. But the one question I have is, is it more Jacksonville got super hot and was tearing up the NFL, or was it more the Titans just completely fell off the cliff? Because, hell, two of those games that the Jacksonville won down the stretch were against the Titans. And think about the other games they won, the Texans, the Jets, a lot of the Ravens without Lamar. A lot of these games, were just teams that weren't that great, and including the Titans, who really, really fell apart. So, I'm not so sure how sold I am on the Jaguars. They didn't look that great at the end. Everybody's picking them because they're playing at home, and they've got Peterson, who won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. Well, he's not coaching the Eagles. He's coaching the Jaguars, and everybody wants to rip on the Chargers coach and talk about how horrible he is. Well, I thought he did a really good job this year with a ton of his players injured, and I think they're going to go in there and win this game. I know that they're missing Mike Williams, and the coach has been criticized for playing him last week. Well, guess what? These guys get paid to play football.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to get mad at the coach for playing one of his best players when he was trying to win a football game. I mean, that's what he's supposed to do. Injuries are a part of it. He's out. He's not going to play. Win without him. And they've been doing it all year. They've been winning games all year with guys out. I think they're going to win this one too.
Well, I'm going to pick Jacksonville on this one. I just think that the home field advantage, that East-West thing always I think drains so many players. But like I said, back to what you were saying, he only can play who's on the schedule, and Jacksonville took advantage down the stretch.
I I understand that, but who did they beat that like really blew you away? I mean, I liked the victory versus the Cowboys, but let's be honest, the Cowboys were taking it to them until the second half when Dak started throwing it to the Jaguars.
Yeah, we got to get into that.
But I'm just saying that was like their one, their best win down the stretch was they got their asses kicked by the Lions, and then came that string of wins. Well, two of the wins were against the Titans, as I said, one against the Texans, who are high school team, and then they beat the Jets 19-3 with no one playing quarterback. And then there's the Cowboys game. So I get it. You can only play the teams on your schedule, but I'm just not as impressed as some other people are, I guess, with what they did.
I'm not going to tell you I saw a ton of Jacksonville games. I saw their game in Europe when they played over in Europe. I may have seen, I saw this past game, but for the most part, I didn't watch a lot of Jacksonville. So I'm not saying, but I just respect, and I know you respect him too, Trevor Lawrence. And I just think that neither of these guys do I think are going to if the Chargers get out, I think they have the best chance of maybe upsetting another team or one of the better teams. But I mean, I just think that, like I said, I just think it's a good story to have these two young. I'm just amazed at how many young stud quarterbacks are in the AFC, and you take Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields away from the NFC, and maybe Brock Purdy now, and they're going to have ancient quarterbacks or good quarterbacks, not great quarterbacks. I just think the AFC is right now poised, I should say, to be the dominant conference for the next decade. Again.
Yeah, but you can't take those guys out. I mean, you got to leave Jalen Hurts in there. You got to leave.
Oh no! I'm saying just I'm
Fields in there. I'm saying there's some good ones, and let's see. Who picks next year. I mean, I think the Panthers are going to draft a quarterback. There's some good young quarterbacks in this draft. So I think the NFC will have a chance to replenish itself. And not to mention, we got to see what happens out in Arizona if Kyler can get going. I mean, you're right. It's kind of tilted towards the AFC at the moment, but things are cyclical. I think the NFC will bounce back. And, my boy Jared Goff's in the NFC, and he sure as hell put together a good season.
He finally, I love the fact that you brought him up because I loved watching them beat the Packers. I'm not even calling it upset. They beat the Packers.
Oh yeah,
they were as good as the Packers, and everybody thought he was a McVay invention. And you know what we saw? He's a pretty good quarterback.
There's a reason why he was drafted numero 1 overall. We had his coach, Tony Franklin, on our show, and, Tony said on the program that it wasn't, just his system that made Jared Goff good. Jared Goff is a good quarterback. And I think this year we saw that. And, he played pretty well last year, honestly. Yeah, he just didn't get any credit because they didn't win any games. This year they turned it around and won some games. But a lot of those games they lost this year weren't because of him. Even in the games they went down, he was putting points on the board.
I can't speak for the team. I can't speak for him. But here's a guy, he went out to the Rams. He got drafted by the Rams, and Fisher was still there, and he got killed the first year. Then McVay comes in. McVay has a plan. They get it together. They make a Super Bowl. Here's a guy. He can be such a good for a team that's never been good, like the Lions. They're trying to change their reputation. Here's a guy who can say, look, when I came to LA, we sucked. But within a few years, we're in the Super Bowl. It can happen if we do the right things. He could be the voice of reason in that locker room. And he's still really young. He's 28?
Yeah, he's a young dude. And he seems to be a good leader. I mean, he led the Rams to the Super Bowl. He's led the Lions to a really good season. The coaches like him, the players like him. I think he was supposed to be a stopgap in Detroit. If you forgotten, they were like, oh, we're getting this guy as part of this deal to get rid of Matthew Stafford. He's coming over, but nobody thought that he was going to be the quarterback 3 years later. And now the Detroit's like, oh, we've got our quarterback of the future. He's on the team.
But what I endeared him, I think, a lot and gave him a lot of credit, especially and should throughout the NFL. He didn't bitch. You didn't sit there and go, I'm not going to the Lions. I want to go somewhere I can win. He didn't say that. He went, and now he's being a part of a turnaround in a city that's just dying for a turnaround. And I kind of hope it happens for him. Yeah, unfortunately, I'd have to root against my team at some point that with them, the Giants. But we'll see. We'll see what happens down the line with them. Let's see. Let's get to. Well, we might as well get to my Minnesota Giants game. The Giants sat people out last week to make sure they're able to play this week. They should be relatively healthy. Minnesota won, but it was against the Bears. These two teams played only 3 weeks ago. Does that help in your estimation or hurt either of the teams? Does it help to have seen the team this recent?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it helps. They played a couple weeks ago in a very close game, 27-24, that the Vikings were able to pull out. But I think it gives the Giants some confidence, honestly. I mean, they saw this team a couple weeks ago. If Minnesota doesn't score 17 points in the fourth quarter, New York Giants win that game. So I definitely think that playing them recently gives the Giants some confidence and helps them going into the game. My whole thing is, the Giants are going to have to run the ball here. That's my big deal with this football game. They're going to have to run on this Minnesota defense, and we've seen guys do it. I mean, in that game a couple of weeks ago, Saquon Barkley ran for 84 yards on 14 carries. Daniel Jones ran for 34. They had 126 yards rushing, and they lost. So I feel like if they can get 150 yards or more run the football, I think the Giants have a really good chance of winning this game.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, let's see it done. I'm picking my Giants. I usually don't. I usually stay away from picking. I'm picking them. I'm just thinking, maybe they can get it done.
Well, I mean, look at the line. It's a 3-point spread. I mean,
which is even.
Yeah, which is pretty much even considering the Vikings are playing at home. So I feel like that Vegas is telling us something with that.
And the whole thing is like, and not to, I grew up watching it up there or watching on TV over there. I mean, Minnesota, when they went into the dome, I know it sounds good to have a dome stadium and everybody for that comfort, but that used to be a place nobody wanted to go.
Yeah.
And now it's a dome stadium. It's okay. It's don't we don't have to worry about anything. I remember for years, they always seemed to face the Rams, and it was always up in Minnesota. It was like these poor guys from Southern California having to go and play in minus 15, and it really affected the way they played. But so my pick is the Giants on that one. What about you?
I'm going to take the Vikings, but I think it's going to be another close one. It's just I'm going by the spread. I think the Vikings, I'm going to take them winning by 4, just because I think they're going to gear up and try and stop Saquon, and I think they're going to have enough to do it. I hope I'm wrong because I'm pulling for the Giants. I like the Giants a lot better, but just looking at it objectively, I'm worried about the Giants stopping Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson. And that passing attack. I think the Vikings are just going to get a little bit too much yards through the air.
All right, we'll see what happens there. Now we'll go to Monday night. Thank God, another Monday night of football here, but it's got to be Tampa Bay and Dallas. You knew they were going to find a way to get that game on prime time. Let's first take a look at Dallas, as you brought up earlier when we were talking about Jacksonville. Dak Prescott has been maybe on the worst 7 or 8 game streak of his career with interceptions. His hand's supposed to be totally healthy. They analyzed it on TV this morning. I think he's thrown 9 in the last, 5 weeks. And as the analyst brought up, he goes, yeah, but 4 of them just bounced out of the receiver's hands. Now, I know that's something that happens that's unfair. Even Peyton Manning always bitches about it on his show with Eli about how, the quarterback, he throws a perfect ball, bounces off the wide receiver's hand, and the quarterback gets screwed for it. But the common denominator in all the interceptions is Dak Prescott. So he's going to have to take that kind of a punishment. Come on. So what do you think? I know that's my ringtone. I know. Hey, I like to be entertaining. So what do you think about the Cowboys here? First of all, is there something more really? You brought it up last week. Micah Parsons has not been the same for the last 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been banged up, and I mean, let's go back and look at these games that they played. You know, they blew that Jaguars game with the interceptions down the stretch and the pick six to close it out. The week before, they almost lost to the Texans, and then they beat the Eagles, which was a good victory, but that was without Jalen Hurts. They beat the Titans, who hasn't beat the Titans in the last 7 weeks of the season, and then
even that was a struggle for them too. They didn't blow out the Titans.
Yeah, and then they lost to the Commanders 26-6. And I keep hearing people saying, well, that game didn't mean that much. And well, you know what? It was Sam Howell, and it was most of the Commanders' backups because they were already out of the playoffs, and they beat the crap out of the Cowboys. And I don't understand how you can't be concerned after watching that game. I sure as hell am concerned. Dak Prescott was 14 of 37 for 128 yards and a pick. That concerned me. And the rushing in that game concerned me. Tony Pollard was the leading rusher for the Cowboys, 7 carries, 19 yards. Just nothing looked good in that game. And you know what? You can tell me that they were saving their guys or they were, saving it for the playoffs. Well, then they shouldn't have played them. Because all the guys played in the game, but it just looked like they weren't out there. So I'm not feeling good about the Cowboys right now. I think there's a lot of pressure on your boy McCarthy to win this game, and I think the pressure is going to get to him. I'm picking the Bucks to win this game because I just have no faith in the Cowboys. And as bad as the Bucks have looked the last 6-7 weeks, they figured out ways to win the games at the end. And, I think they're going to do it again.
Yeah, I do have a feeling.
As nauseous as it makes me.
I know. I think Brady, I know that hurts you.
I just want him to go away.
I know. He's going to be in Vegas next year. He's going to be in Vegas. He's going to Vegas next year.
He's definitely not going away.
He's a done deal. But, at long last, I mean, there's something wrong in Dallas since the Jimmy Johnson team that he put together, and Troy Aikman and those guys. They had Tony Romo, who, not my favorite quarterback, but he was an effective quarterback. They've had athletes. They've had, Jerry Jones has spent money. But
they've had one of the best teams on paper
that's the
league, but they never get anywhere.
There's no heart. I mean, is it Jerry Jones not, I don't know. Here's another thing where you sit there and you go, well, he brought in Bill Parcells. It didn't work. He brought in Mike McCarthy. It's seemingly not working. They make the playoffs, but not much else. What's missing in Dallas? Is it the heart? Is it the soul? Is it the fact of the matter that these players just become stars just because they're Dallas Cowboys? So, just because you're, quote unquote, America's team, you're always on TV. You don't feel you have to fight for it. We talked about how good or bad Jacksonville may be. Well, Jacksonville is thought about as being the dregs. And for them to even get on a national TV telecast, they got to win games. So they're in the playoffs. Same thing for the Lions. Same thing for a lot of these teams that are overlooked. But Dallas, no matter what, good, bad, or indifferent, because they like putting Jerry Jones' reaction on TV. And the fact of the matter is they have this reputation. And yes, they do, for most part, win at least 8 to 10 to 11 games a year. But they're in the playoffs, they're just an afterthought because they leave right away. What's wrong with Dallas?
I mean, what's the common denominator? I mean,
Jerry.
It's the owner. And, it starts up top. And there's just, he wants to be, like you said, he wants to be on TV. He wants to make all the decisions. And a lot of the owners that win are guys that delegate this stuff to guys that the guys that know what the hell they're doing. They run the business and they let someone else run the football. He wants to run the football like he's some football god, and he's not. And that's why they he can buy all the talent he wants, and he does, but they never get anywhere. And I think we're going to see it again.
Yeah, no, well, I hope so because I hate the Cowboys. I I don't really hate the Bucks, but I'm kind of sick of the Tom Brady um, kneeling and worshiping club. I mean, I think Tom Brady's done a great job for football, and God bless him wherever. But I think it's time for him to retire. But I know he's coming. He's going to be in the Raiders. He's going to be Raiders next year. It looks like they're moving hell on earth to get him there, and it kind of makes sense for him to go there when you got Renfro, you got
Devontae
Adams,
Adams.
you got if they
Aaron
bring
Waller.
back, yeah, you got Jacobs if he comes back, and then you have his offensive coordinator for years up in New England. So I mean, it's like that's just but the one thing I will say, everybody's talking about that, and that's what got me so PO'd listening to everything all week long. Where's Brady going to be next year? Can we get through the playoffs first?
Yeah.
Does this have to be the discussion on every show?
Yeah, I don't understand why we have to talk about whether Aaron Rodgers is going to play for the Packers again next year. I mean, can we let him get back to his house?
Decompress.
Yeah, can we let him get home before we start asking him what he's going to do in 60 to 90 days? I mean, I don't know, but they were riding about McVay, going nuts trying to figure out what he's going to do. He came out right as we started the show and announced he is coming back to the Rams, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, they still have their core of players, and you know what? Even if Stafford's not able to come back, I think they found something with our boy Mr. Mayfield. He played really good down the stretch and was on the team for 6 weeks and won some ball games. So I think if they can get Cooper Kupp back, they can get Aaron Donald back. I think they're going to be all right.
You got to think about that. It's really funny. It was like when you look at this new generation of coaches, it's like they're going to coach, be successful, and then try and get their TV gig. So they're still young and good looking and they don't have to work so hard. And meanwhile, these older coaches like Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, all these Pete Carroll, you couldn't ask them to go to the sideline. They tear them off the sideline.
Yeah, you're gonna have to carry those guys out of their offices in a box.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy has one bad season, he's gonna quit. That's what I heard some old timer saying that he was like, whatever happened to sticking through? He has one bad year and he wants to quit. He's like, the guys used to have bad years all the time. It's called coaching. And you coach the team and you draft a couple guys and you get better and you come back the next year. You don't retire after one bad season when you're 37.
But then again, the other thing is not that they would have, but I mean, you talk about the Landrys, the Shulas, and those guys that had to be taken out with a crowbar. But the other thing is the money that ESPN will throw at these guys.
Yeah.
To get them on is just another thing where I can't blame the guy when their agent sits there and goes, you can be a the color man for $50 million a year.
Yeah. So Tony Romo makes what, $25 million a year, and he has to call one game. And guess what? No one gets on Tony Romo if one of the teams loses. Like there's
he's annoying.
Oh, I hate him, but there's no pressure on him, what I'm saying.
No.
Like these guys can go from
win or loss.
Yeah, these guys go from this pressure cooker situation where they're making $10 million, or they can go to this situation where they fly to a city and talk about a football game for a couple hours and they get paid more money. So I don't blame them for that. Hell, I'd quit too, but a lot of them can't handle it. Like they do it for a year and then they're like, get me the hell out of here. Like I'm pretty sure Sean Payton's going to come back and coach this year because I don't think he wants to do that shit.
Yeah, and the other thing about Sean Payton is like he won his Super Bowl out in LA. That gets you a good 5-6 years of okay, you gave us a championship. That's okay. It's not like one of these programs that's used to winning all the time. So we'll see what happens there. Before we go, we got about 5 minutes left. We have to talk about what is the most dysfunctional team in football, the Houston Texans firing Lovie Smith after a year. There has never been a crueler situation to be thrust upon a good man than being the head coach of that Houston Texans team, knowing that they gave away their franchise quarterback. They had no replacements. They have no players. I mean, in the last year, how many players have left there? I mean, D Hop, J.J. Watt, players that will be in their Ring of Honor if they ever have one.
Zach Cunningham, everybody good is gone.
And then you bring this guy in who I love. He's a football guy. He wants to get back into the game. He wants to see if he can, replicate what he did with the Bears. And, you give him a bad hand, and then you have the nerve to fire him the day after the season's over. Even though they kept him, they were in a couple games. They were competitive in a lot of games.
I thought he did a pretty good job with the team that he had. And then, then they come back, and the last game of the season where they, want him to lose, he wins and beats the Colts, I think, and wins the game 32-31, and they fire him because they, now they're getting now they don't get the number one pick. So it's like they're punishing him for winning. We talked about this before the season. They shouldn't have fired the coach from last year.
Right.
That was Pulley's first job ever as a head coach, and I thought he did a pretty good job with what he had. And then, Lovey comes in. Who the hell wants to go coach that team? I wouldn't go coach that team if you paid me $1 billion, because what are you going to do? I mean, you're never going to get all your money. They're going to fire you after one season. I just, it's a sham of an organization, and it's embarrassing to the league looking at what they've done the last 3 or 4 years since they got rid of Bill O'Brien.
They talk about the fact that, that Jeff Saturday was brought into Indianapolis, and there was no, the minorities weren't, and it's going to be taken care of in the offseason. Minorities weren't thought about and things like that. But Goodell should look at this, because there's 2 minority coaches that were given 1 year and thrown out the door.
Yeah, and given no shot to win.
Right. That's a worse look than not even getting the job.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you give him the job, you give him no resources. He does a great job with what he has, and then you fire him like it was his fault that you sucked. It's a complete joke, and I think it's a disgrace to the football league, the National Football League.
Yeah, and this is where I hate to say it, but the right now the Texans are a detriment to the league, and this guy has shown no ability to do anything with this franchise. Why can't Goodell put him on notice and say, look, we might have to ask you to sell your franchise. This is a closed club.
Well, I mean, they're going to make Daniel Snyder sell the team, but you're not going to make this guy sell the team. I mean, look what's going on out there. I think it's it needs to be discussed, and I don't see it getting better there. I see it getting worse, and any of the players that are out there want out, and you know what? I can kind of understand why. At this point, the organization's just horrible, and I feel bad because there's good football fans. I mean, I think about when the Houston Oilers were there and how loyal and how hungry those fans were for wins, and this is what they get.
Well, yeah, I mean, football is religion in Texas. I mean, there's nothing more big or bigger down there than high school through college to the pros. So, I mean, if you can't get people, especially to want to play in Houston, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's an absolute joke.
It is. And one last thing before we go, because we're talking about contracts and stuff, and it was something that was brought up on the radio this morning. I was out getting breakfast, and it's funny. What struck me is baseball has no salary cap, and everything's guaranteed. Football needs a salary cap and needs guarantees because their careers are so much shorter. Whereas baseball players, Albert Pujols was making $40 million or $30 million till he's 40 years old.
Well, yeah, and sometimes guys have one good year in baseball, and then they get these 12-year guaranteed contracts, and then they suck. Look at the guy for the Orioles, was Davis. He had that one good season, and then like the next year he couldn't hit the ball, and he's making $19 million. I mean, I've never understood it, but it's the reason that I've quit watching baseball for the most part. Is these guys that come in and pitch 2 to 3 batters because they're left-handers coming up. They go out there and they pitch, they throw 9 pitches every 6 days and they make $12 million a year. And it makes me sick to my stomach.
But I mean, I'm just thinking the justifications and when you look at it, it just is totally wrong that Saquon Barkley is in his 5th year in the league, and he's pretty much, this is coming up on his contract, his one contract, and he'll only probably be around another 3 or 4 years.
If he's lucky.
And he's already had one major knee surgery. He's had 2 very good years, 1 good year, and 2 injury-plagued years. And he's only going to get 9 years out of his career. Why? He should be getting paid top dollar, knowing that he's going to be topped out and out in 3 or 4 years. Whereas if he was a baseball player, he got another 18 years to make all those millions.
Oh, and look at Derrick Henry. I mean, he's carried that franchise. We talk about the Ravens and their lack of weapons. I mean, who the hell was the wide receivers on the Titans this year? I mean, Robert Woods was their best wide receiver. What was he, the 4th option out in Los Angeles for all those years? I mean, Derrick Henry should be given a golden statue for all he's done at the Titans. And what are they going to do? They're going to cut his ass as quickly as they can and try and get an out and under from the last few years of his contract because they're, ballooned on the back end. So I wouldn't be shocked if they cut him tomorrow, except for the fact that he's their only good player.
Yeah, and then to keep in fan interest, they have to keep him.
Exactly.
All right, my friend, we are on for next Thursday. We'll review what happened in the first wild card weekend. This is a great weekend, you football fans. Like I said when we came on the air, it's a little bittersweet knowing that the season's over, but we should have an exciting weekend full of football Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And we will be back on Thursday. What's going on Sunday on your show?
We're going to be talking a little end of the year college football, breaking down the national championship game a little bit, not long because there's not too much to discuss. But we're going to talk a little bit about, Stetson Bennett, his career. What an amazing, I was critical of this guy and, I gave him a hard time, and I got to be honest. I feel like an idiot because the way that he's played down the stretch when a lot of times it was put on him. I mean, that game, if he doesn't throw dimes and, come up with some unbelievable plays, Georgia doesn't win that game. So, you say whatever you want to about this kid, but hell, I'm a believer now. And anyone that's critical of him, I'm critical of that person because this dude has proved to everybody he can get it done. And now they're like, oh, he's not draftable as an NFL player. I'm like, why not? Hell, he's about the same size as Brock Purdy and a lot more accomplished. So, Brock Purdy can do it. I think that Stetson Bennett can do it if he's on the right team.
Well, even that, or okay, what? I'm trying to think of the kid Tim Boyle. You mean he can't be a backup quarterback better than Tim Boyle was with Detroit? You know what I mean? If nothing else,
Chase Daniel has made $60 million in the NFL. The kid out of Missouri, and you're telling me that Stetson Bennett can't play in the league? I think he certainly can. He's smart. He's a really good athlete, and he's played a ton of football at the highest level. And
here's the other thing, just to get back to your original point. Okay, no one thought Brock Purdy could play. Well, Trey Lance has been sitting since the second game of the year. Jimmy Garoppolo, unfortunately, got hurt again, and Brock Purdy has not played pretty bad, huh?
Yeah. What the hell are the Niners going to do now? They wanted to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo to put Trey Lance in. Trey Lance gets hurt in game 1. So then they go back to Jimmy Garoppolo. He wins a bunch of games. He looks pretty good. Then he gets hurt. Now they're going to their third stringer, who was the last pick in the draft. And what's he won? 7 in a row or whatever it is. They've got a good problem to have.
They've got
3 quarterbacks.
They've got a good problem to have, but tough one to solve. I would think if you're gonna, unless Garoppolo, if Garoppolo is wants to get out of there and get a surefire starting job somewhere, say, we talked about Lamar going to Miami. Say somebody wants him. Say just for craps and giggles, the Texans want him, and he knows he's going to start there. I can see Garoppolo leaving, saying, "Hey, I'm 30 years old now. This is my one chance to get the hell out."
I wouldn't go to the damn Texans.
I'm just using because they have no quarterback somewhere where he knows that he's going to walk in there and start. All right, where he knows, Trey Lance, I don't think has a lot of options.
Yeah.
And I think Trey Lance is watching his NFL career ebb away, especially if San Francisco gets to the NFC Finals. How can you pin anything on Trey Lance? I know John Lynch is going to have to swallow hard on this one, but if this guy takes you to the NFC Finals, a step away from the Super Bowl, and you're going to come back and give it to a guy who has thrown under 100 passes in his NFL career. I understand an injury took him out, but he hasn't really shown that he could do anything where this kid almost gets you to the Super Bowl. I think Trey Lance.
I think you keep them both at this point. I mean, you got the kid that's played pretty good towards the end of the season. You got the other kid that you drafted at the top of the draft. They're both on rookie deals. One of them was a 7th round draft pick. So you're not paying tons of money to either of them. Why not keep them both and let Jimmy walk? That's what I would do.
I agree with letting Jimmy walk. The only thing I worry about with this is I'm week by week, Brock Purdy's getting my trust back again from what I thought of him at Iowa State. Trey Lance, I had no version. I never watched him up in the Dakotas. But the fact of the matter is I would rather go out and find some kind of a veteran to be my security blanket in case something happened to Brock Purdy, or he turned out to be just a one-year wonder.
Well, I understand that, but they went out and drafted this kid. Number 2 or 3 overall. You what are you saying about your scouting department? What are you saying about your ability to go evaluate talent if you get rid of him after his first injury? I mean, I don't think they can do that. I think they have to at least give him a chance to compete for the job next year. I think that either you do that or you just throw all the work you've done out the window.
Yeah, but okay, not to linger on this conversation, but here's the thing. You bring him back, you bring Brock Purdy back. Brock Purdy right now is the Niners' luck charm. The fans love him. You're going to tell me you're going to go into camp going, well, we're going to give Trey Lance an even shot if Brock Purdy wins 2 games in the playoffs. You're going to say we're going to give Trey Lance a chance to compete for the starting.
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not John Lynch, but I would assume that he would want to at least keep him around another year. I mean, who are you going to trade him for? I mean, no one's good.
I don't know. I'd cut him. You got nothing going. You got nothing invested in him. I'm just saying. Trey Lance is the worst option out of the 3 right now. The best option would be to keep Jimmy to back up Purdy, or Purdy to back and be that guy.
People want to. Jimmy's a commodity that people want. So people are going to want him, and you can trade him. You can. I think he's a free agent, so he can leave. I mean, I think that Jimmy's going to go somewhere, and he's going to compete for a starting job.
Yeah.
There's nowhere for Trey Lance to go, and you drafted him number 3 overall. I think you have to. You entrusted him as your starter at the beginning of the season. They have to think that he's a good player. And I'm just thinking about what they are thinking. I believe that they think he's good, and I think they'll give him a shot to at least compete for it. I'm not saying that they're going to name him the starter, but I think they're going to at least keep him around for one more season.
I'll be the conspiracy theorist of the 2 of us, and I'll just say I think it's if he's given a chance to compete and they keep him around there, and if there's anybody who wants to keep him around, it's John Lynch.
Yeah.
To me, because John Lynch,
and he's the one making the decision.
No, I know, because John Lynch will look totally. He won't get. If they win, it won't come up. But the fact of the matter is, if ever it comes up, or whoever was drafted behind Trey Lance does very, very well, and for some reason it'll be brought up every year. Why did you trade up for this guy that never got used? It was like, and that's the ego of the general managers. And
yeah, I'm just saying you can't really trade him, and he's under contract. So I think that's why he'll be around.
All right. Well, I'll say this to end the conversation. Bring in a veteran because if anything happens to Brock Purdy, you're going to have to bet your life on somebody who really never did anything in college either. So we'll see.
Well, he did enough to where they wanted to draft him number 3. So
yeah, well, Mitch Trubisky.
I get it. I'm just saying they must have liked something he did. So we'll see what happens. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, we'll say what, man, and that'll be for another conversation after the playoffs. So everybody enjoy the weekend. We will be back. Nate, have a great weekend.
All right,
See
buddy.
you next week.
They're good.